Hi, I'm Dave Thomas. This video is for guitar players that are looking for information on YouTube about six-string banjos. I'm posting this video because I couldn't quite find what I wanted on YouTube concerning six strings, and hopefully this will be of help to you. I did find a fellow that wants to closely emulate a five-string bluegrass banjo by retuning his six-string and learning new techniques, but that seems to defeat the purpose of a guitar player wanting a low learning curve. Another fellow said you can't use guitar technique on a six string, but I found that to be untrue. You can use guitar technique within reason and get a very pleasing and a very acceptable sound. Hopefully this video will help someone who has yet to buy a six string find out what they want to get, or someone who already has one figure out what can easily be done with it. And hopefully you'll find this information of value. The purpose of buying a six-string banjo. Why did I buy one? Well, with groups like the Dixie Chicks and Keith Urban and Taylor Swift using banjo in their music, the sound has become popular once again in country and pop country music. So a lot of guitarists want to buy an instrument that sounds like a banjo without the steep learning curve of learning how to play the five-string banjo. And this instrument is a banjo. When you pluck a string, it sounds exactly like you pluck a string on a banjo. It is a banjo in every mechanical sense. Obviously it has six strings and they're tuned differently than a banjo, but it's a banjo. And if it's played with the right things in mind, I should say, you can't play rock and roll on a banjo. It'd be kind of hard, wouldn't make any sense. But if you play country music or you play folk music and you play it right, it can sound reasonably like a banjo. And there are just enough recordings and performances that I do that made it make sense to buy a banjo. So that's why I got this one. I just happen to be very fortunate in getting this particular banjo. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Now, here's what can't be done, as far as I'm concerned, with a six-string banjo. You can't precisely emulate a five-string bluegrass banjo. There are a number of reasons for that. First of all, five-string banjos really only have four strings that are chorded. The fifth string is a drone. So you've got the difference there, four strings and a fifth string, which is a drone. You have open chord tuning on banjos. The banjos are tuned to a G chord, mostly, typically. So you have the difference between banjo tuning and guitar tuning is that the chords they're not going to sound the same because they are different inversions. So a D chord on a banjo and a D chord on a guitar, they are the same chord, but they don't sound the same because they're a different inversion of the chord. Banjo rolls and fingerings are different than guitar fingerstyle playing. Of course, most banjo players, not all, but most banjo players use finger picks. And even when I'm doing fingerstyle on a guitar, I don't use finger picks. I used picks at one time and I got used to them, but over time I stopped using them, and I don't do enough banjo work in general to get used to using finger picks again. Retuning and learning new techniques defeats the purpose of buying a six-string banjo for the guitar player because, again, we want that low or non-existent learning curve. So trying to emulate five-string bluegrass banjo, you'd just be better off, if you're going to retune the instrument and learn new techniques, you'd just be better off buying a five-string bluegrass banjo. Now let's talk about what kind of six-string banjos are available on the market. Most guitar players that I know don't do enough banjo work to want to spend a great deal on a six-string banjo. As I mentioned earlier, with the advent of a lot of country acts using banjo in their music, we find it necessary from time to time to have a banjo sound either in our recordings or in our performances. So we start looking around to see what kind of banjos are affordable, what kind we can deal with when it comes to quality inconsistencies and that kind of thing. And there seem to be two extreme ranges in the market right now. You've got Inexpensive banjos from between $200 and $300. And then Gold Tone makes a 6-string for about $700, and I'm sure that there are plenty of manufacturers that make $2,000 and $3,000 or more 6-string banjos. What I found is that unlike inexpensive guitars, inexpensive banjos don't sound that great. I'm amazed at how you can take a $200 Yamaha guitar and do wonderful things with it. They sound good. I mean, for what they cost, it's just a tremendous value. When you get a $200 banjo, they're not very loud. They don't have much projection. They don't have very good tone, and they're not terribly playable. The intonation, if anything, is worse on an inexpensive banjo, and banjos already have a difficult time with intonation from what I can read online. What I found is I was very fortunate in that I happened across this particular banjo. It's called a Framus. You see it on the headstock there. And it's a banjo that's made by a company that's now out of business. They went out of business in the 60s. They made electric guitars in Europe, and they were never very popular here. But like some other instrument manufacturers, they happened to hit on a pretty good thing with this particular banjo. It's got a brass tone ring. It's got a tremendous amount of heft. It's a really heavy banjo, and it's loud. To the point where even when I play without finger picks, I can sound out over the acoustic guitars on stage pretty easily. So if you can find a Framus online, typically you can get them for about $400 to $600, and I find that to be a pretty reasonable cost for an instrument that I'm going to use part-time. Some cool things about it is it doesn't use loop-end strings. It's got a tailpiece that uses standard acoustic or electric guitar strings. And the tailpiece is adjustable. You can increase the downward pressure on the floating bridge. You can increase or decrease the distance from the tailpiece to the bridge. Whether you like them or not, it's got a 0 fret, so that should help it to try and be in tune with itself. And it's got good tuners on it. And it's just got a nice construction, and it's a pretty attractive instrument. This one tunes pretty good, but I have to tune the G string down just a little bit for when it's being used in an open position. Otherwise, it'll sound sharp when it's fretted. So it has some limitations, but it's pretty good. The other thing is that it's got a nice width neck. It's a little bit narrower than my Martin, so I have to kind of shift between the two and make a little bit of an adjustment. But otherwise, the neck is straight. It's easily adjustable. The head adjusts from the front. And again, if you can find one of these online, I highly recommend them, especially if you're not a banjo purist. You're going to find that whatever works and plays well for you is going to be what you want. All right, let's talk about strings just a little bit. There's a fellow on YouTube who's got a lot of 6-string banjo videos posted out there who only uses Foss-Braun acoustic guitar strings and has a fair bit of scorn for anybody that uses anything other than Foss-Braun's acoustic guitar strings for the 6-string banjos. Now, I tried Foss-Braun's. I have an acoustic guitar. I have a couple of acoustic guitars, and I use Elixir bronze strings on them. But I didn't like the way it made the banjo sound. It was dark, and they seemed to be too heavy. Even the lights seemed to be too heavy a gauge for the instrument. Come to find out that banjo string manufacturers do include one Foss-Braun string, and that is to give it a darker sound on the 4th string. But that's the only string that they typically include that's a bronze string. Strings that are typically sold for 5-string banjos are made either of stainless steel or nickel-plated steel. And if you want the authoritative answer, of course, you go to an expert. Elixir makes acoustic, electric, and banjo strings. And I called them the other day, and they told me that aside from the gauge and the loop end, as opposed to a grommet end, their electric guitar strings and their banjo strings are identical, nickel-plated steel. So I use Elixir light gauge electric guitar strings, and I like the way they sound. I like the way they feel. Now I suppose if you want your banjo to sound less like a typical banjo, you could use all Frost Brown's acoustic guitar strings, but I like the way these sound. Let's talk a minute about the ends of the strings, because that could be different for you depending on the banjo that you buy. Again, I mentioned that this Framus has a tailpiece that uses a standard grommet electric or acoustic guitar string. Some banjos have a peg that you have to loop the string around, so that may limit your choices when it comes to the strings that you buy. Okay, now for you acoustic players that are performing, most acoustic players like pickups in their guitars. Unfortunately, what I found is that pickups on a banjo, it's difficult to find one that really keeps the banjo tonality involved in the sound. Taylor Swift has a pickup in her banjo that she plays. I think the name of the song is Mean Girls. Keith Urban does a country song where he does this lengthy intro on a banjo with a pickup in it. And neither one of those two instruments sound very much like a banjo at all, so far as I'm concerned. This banjo has a pickup on it. It's a contact pickup that sits right below the bridge. And I don't use it very often. The only time I use it is if I absolutely cannot get a miking situation, because it makes this instrument sound like a kind of a guitar with bad intonation. So unfortunately, pickups don't seem to work very well for banjos. What I have resorted to is a clip-on mic, an acoustic, a regular microphone that clips on and comes out over the top of the head of the banjo. That, to me, is as good as it gets, and it's just like miking it with a stand mic. Contrary to what you might have heard, you can actually use guitar techniques on a banjo. You can use the same chords, you can use the same finger style, and you can use the same flat pick techniques that you use on songs, as long as the song is of a nature that suits the banjo. That might be soft rock, that might be country, or folk, or alternative. If you just and I'm going to show you a little bit more in depth what we use in two songs at the end of this video. That one is a finger style and one uses a flat pick style. Now I'd like to demonstrate how you can use guitar methods exactly like you would on the guitar on a 6-string banjo. I'm going to play two tunes, one using finger style and the other one using flat pick. And you'll see that even though they don't sound pretty much anything like a bluegrass banjo, they do sound like a banjo, and it sounds pretty good. Certainly reasonable for an accent instrument or in a mix somewhere. Once again, my name is Dave Thomas. I hope you find this video of value to you. I know I was a little frustrated when I looked on the internet for information concerning the 6-string banjo, but maybe this will give you enough information to make an informed choice and to help you figure out how to utilize your 6-string.